Since the 1920s, the name Imperial had appeared under the Chrysler roof. But it wasn't until 1955 that it officially became its own brand, going head-to-head with Cadillac and Lincoln. And among all the generations of Imperial that ever rolled, the 1960 was one of the most crazy and daring. A design full of sharp lines and soaring tailfins. An interior that looked like it stepped straight out of the future. A powerful V8 engine, strong enough to push this massive hunk of steel effortlessly down the highway. So why couldn't a luxury machine so unique, so distinctive, conquer the market? Let's explore the story behind it, where history, engineering, and style meet, to understand why the 1960 Chrysler Imperial was both Chrysler's pride and its regret. Since the 1920s, the Imperial name had been reserved for Chrysler's most elegant, top-of-the-line offerings. It was a badge that quietly told the world you had arrived. But in 1955, Chrysler took a bold step. Imperial would no longer be just a trim level. It would become its own standalone brand, meant to go toe-to-toe with Cadillac and Lincoln. Letters went out to existing owners, telling them their next Imperial wouldn't simply be a Chrysler. It would be something more. At first, the differences were subtle. The inaugural '55 Imperial still shared much of its body with Chrysler's other big cars. But that was about to change. By 1957, Imperial had broken away completely. Every panel, every curve, every piece of glass was unique. It even debuted the first curved side glass ever fitted to an American production car. And under the direction of styling chief Virgil Exner, the car wore bold, sculpted lines and fins that seemed to stretch toward the horizon. Buyers noticed. Sales in 1957 topped 36,000 units, more than triple the year before. The success convinced Chrysler that Imperial deserved its own assembly plant. In 1959, they opened a dedicated facility on West Warren Avenue in Dearborn, Michigan, ready to handcraft luxury cars that could stand with the very best. But timing can be cruel. As the 50s drew to a close, the U.S. economy slowed. By 1958, sales had fallen to just 16,000 units, barely rebounding in 1959. The momentum Imperial had worked so hard to build was slipping away, and while the brand still carried prestige, it was about to face the toughest years in its short, independent life, a fight to prove it could hold its place in America's luxury car arena. While the rest of Chrysler's lineup was moving toward the new unibody construction in the early 60s, Imperial stayed the course with traditional body-on-frame design. And there was a reason for that. Body-on-frame might have been old school, but it delivered the kind of road isolation, quietness, and solid feel that luxury car buyers expected. In a world where smoothness was the ultimate sign of class, Imperial wasn't about to give that up. There was also a practical side. Chrysler had just poured serious money into retooling the Warren Avenue plant in Dearborn to build body-on-frame cars. It didn't make much sense to switch Imperial over to unibody when the equipment and the craftsmanship were already in place. So for the 1960 model year, the Imperial rolled out of Warren Avenue with a fully redesigned body, still riding on a stout, separate frame. And redesigned wasn't just marketing talk. Everything from the roof to the quarter panels, from the fenders to the deck lid, from the hood to the doors, was new. Yet, a few familiar pieces remained, like the wraparound windshield, the side glass, the door hinges, and the cowl structure, carried over from the previous generation. It was a smart mix of fresh style and proven engineering. Buyers in 1960 had 3 distinct trims to choose from. The Custom was the entry point, offering Imperial luxury in its most accessible form. Step up to the Crown, and you got a more upscale finish and added amenities. At the top sat the LeBaron, the most exclusive and opulent Imperial money could buy. A car that was as much about presence as it was about transportation. It was clear. Beneath all the chrome and fins, this was still a hand-built luxury machine engineered to glide down the road with dignity. From the very first glance, the 1960 Imperial announced itself with a face you couldn't mistake for anything else. The front bumper swept outward in a dramatic winged shape, an intentional nod to the outstretched wings of the Imperial Eagle emblem perched proudly on the hood. It was bold, almost defiant, as if daring Cadillac and Lincoln to top it. Interestingly, early design sketches hinted at an even wilder front end. Hidden headlamps were on the table, tucked away behind bodywork for a cleaner, more high-tech look. But in the end, the idea was scrapped. The accountants worried about cost, the engineers worried about reliability, so the Imperial made do with exposed quad headlamps. Stylish, yes. But you can't help but imagine how much more futuristic it would have looked with those concealed lights. Out back, the fins rose high, taller and more aggressive than before. Here's where it gets controversial. Those towering tail fins were directly inspired by the 1957 Plymouth, a car much lower on Chrysler's price ladder. Normally, design cues debut on a luxury flagship and then filter down to the cheaper models, not the other way around. Yet Imperial borrowed from Plymouth, reversing that tradition. It gave the car presence, sure, but also raised eyebrows in the luxury market. The rear deck dropped away sharply, its steep slope interrupted by a single strip of trim running down the center, stopping just above the bumper. Just below, Imperial appeared in bold black script, understated but commanding. The tail lamps, pure jet age, slim pointed pods that looked like rocket boosters ready to fire. In 1960, that was still the height of cool. The LeBaron version added an extra touch of exclusivity. Its smaller limousine-style rear window sat within a massive C-pillar, giving passengers privacy and lending the car a solid, almost armored look. One final break with tradition came up front. Gone was the egg crate grille pattern that had been an Imperial signature since its debut as a standalone make. In its place was a more linear, horizontal design, cleaner, more modern, but perhaps a little less distinctive. Love it or not, the 60 Imperial's exterior was impossible to ignore. Every curve, every flourish seemed to say, this is not just another luxury car, it's a statement. Step inside the 1960 Imperial, and you're greeted by a cabin that feels equal parts luxury lounge and science fiction set. Front and center is the steering wheel, though calling it round would be generous. It's a squircle, a squared-off circle, unlike anything else on the road. Unique? Absolutely. Practical? Maybe not. With the slow steering ratios of the era, your hands would find themselves sliding up and down those flat sides as the wheel wound back after a turn. Still, it looked futuristic, and in 1960 that counted for something. Ahead of the driver, the instrument cluster glowed with Chrysler's electroluminescent lighting. No bulbs, just smooth, even light across bold, easy-to-read numerals. It felt advanced, almost aircraft-like, and it made nighttime driving a little more special. To the left sat Chrysler's push-button torque flight transmission controls, a signature feature of the brand. In the center of the dash, pod-shaped air vents gave the climate system a touch of space-age flair. Designer Tom Bingman and his team didn't hold back on bright work. Chrome trim was placed with precision, not just to impress, but to highlight the shapes and curves of the dashboard and door panels. Buyers could outfit their Imperial with an impressive list of options. Single or dual-zone air conditioning, front and rear, turned the big sedan into a rolling icebox. Tinted glass, power door locks, power windows, and Chrysler's autopilot cruise control added convenience that was ahead of its time. For 1960, Imperial also introduced power vent windows, the first time such a feature appeared on the model. Under the skin, there was another innovation, an alternator. Most cars in 1960 still used generators, but Imperial's alternator charged more efficiently and would become standard across Chrysler's lineup by 1961. Even the seating reflected Chrysler's willingness to experiment. The driver's seatback was slightly taller and more contoured than the passengers, offering extra shoulder support. A curious decision, but one aimed at comfort behind the wheel. Swivel-out front seats, first offered in 1959, remained available, making entry and exit as graceful as the car's exterior suggested. Inside the '60 Imperial, every detail whispered and sometimes shouted that this was no ordinary automobile. It was a rolling showcase of comfort, technology, and design ambition. Beneath that long, sculpted hood sat a power plant worthy of the Imperial name, Chrysler's 413 cubic inch wedge head V8. Rated at 350 gross horsepower, it wasn't just about numbers on paper. This engine delivered the kind of smooth, effortless thrust that luxury buyers expected. Dip into the throttle, and the big Imperial didn't leap forward so much as surge, gathering speed with the calm authority of a train leaving the station. Mated to Chrysler's 3-speed torque flight automatic, standard equipment, the 413 made highway driving almost serene. At 70 miles an hour, the engine loafed along, quiet and composed, ready to summon more speed with a gentle press of your right foot. Passing slower traffic wasn't a matter of if, but how quickly. For a car that tipped the scales at over 2 tons, the performance was impressive. Acceleration was strong enough to make merging a stress-free affair, and the Imperial could cruise all day without breaking a sweat. More importantly, it did so with remarkable refinement. There was no vibration, no harshness, just a steady, confident hum from under the hood. And reliability? The 413 had a reputation for being nearly bulletproof. With proper maintenance, it could rack up miles for decades, making it as dependable as it was dignified. In the 1960 Imperial, the engine wasn't just a mechanical component, it was the beating heart of a machine built to glide across America's highways in style, comfort, and with just the right amount of authority. For all its presence, power, and polish, the 1960 Imperial never became the sales hit Chrysler had hoped for. Production for the year totaled 17,719 units, a far cry from the heights reached just 3 years earlier. Breaking it down, 7,786 were the entry-level Custom, 8,226 were the mid-range Crown, 1,691 were the top-tier LeBaron, and just 16 were the ultra-rare Crown Imperial limousines, hand-built symbols of status for a select few. Part of the challenge was price. The Custom started at around $5,000, equivalent to roughly $55,000 today. The LeBaron, before you even ticked an option box, could easily climb toward the modern equivalent of $70,000. Add air conditioning, power accessories, and other luxuries, and you were well into territory that would make even well-heeled buyers think twice. Then there was the competition. Cadillac's 1960 lineup was gorgeous, well-marketed, and already entrenched in the minds of luxury buyers as the American status car. Cadillac sold not just automobiles, but an image, a symbol of success that no one questioned. Lincoln's offerings that year weren't much of a threat, but Cadillac's dominance left little room for Imperial to expand its market share. And while the '60 Imperial boasted fresh styling, cutting-edge features, and rock-solid engineering, brand perception is a powerful thing. For many buyers, Chrysler was still the other guy in the luxury game, an underdog without the decades of prestige Cadillac enjoyed. In the end, the Imperial remained admired by enthusiasts, but it was never embraced by the broader buying public. It was a car that could stand proudly alongside its rivals in quality and innovation, but not in sales charts. And that, perhaps, is the greatest irony of the 1960 Imperial. It was everything a luxury car should be, except the one thing that mattered most to the accountants: a commercial success. The 1960 Imperial stands as proof of a time when Chrysler wasn't afraid to go big. Bold design, advanced technology, and true luxury comfort. But the market can be unforgiving, and this car, for all its qualities, never became the reigning champion. What about you? Do you see the 1960 Imperial as an underrated masterpiece? Or simply a step taken at the wrong moment in Chrysler's history? Share your story and your perspective in the comments, because it's your stories that keep legends like this alive. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and be sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey, where we'll explore more machines that once captured the hearts of an entire generation.